All right, let's dive right into a problem that pretty much every big company faces: trying to get a handle on the massive, complicated web of information systems they've built over the years. It's a huge challenge, so let's start with a really basic question.
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. It really boils down to this. Different teams in different parts of the company are all building their own stuff, totally separate from each other. They're solving their own little problems, which is great, but nobody's really looking at the big picture. And over time, you just end up with this tangled mess of technology that honestly no single person really understands.
That is the perfect analogy. Seriously, imagine one crew is building a road, another is laying down sewer pipes, and a third is throwing up skyscrapers, but none of them are talking. You can just imagine the mess, right? Roads that lead to nowhere, buildings with no water. Well, that's pretty much the kind of chaos we see with information systems all the time.
Well, you've got to step back. You have to find a structured way to look at the entire organization from a bunch of different angles. In other words, you don't need just a map, you need a framework for making the map. And that's exactly where something called an enterprise architecture framework comes into play. It gives you a system, a consistent way to ask all the right questions, and more importantly, organize all the answers so you can finally create that master blueprint. And a really classic, super powerful example of this is the Zachman Framework. So here it is, and this grid is the whole idea in a nutshell. The framework says that to truly understand your entire company, you need to ask 6 basic, fundamental questions: what, how, where, who, when, and why. But you have to ask them from 6 completely different points of view. Every single box, every cell in this grid represents a specific piece of the puzzle. It's all about who's doing the asking. It means you're looking at the very same company, the same systems, but you're putting on a different pair of glasses each time. Okay, so think of the rows as different zoom levels. You start way up at the top at 30,000 feet with the planner's view. That's like the CEO thinking about the overall scope. Then you zoom in a bit to the business owner, who's focused on how the business actually works. Zoom in again, and you've got the architect, who's building the conceptual models. Then the designer, who's figuring out the specific technology to use. Then you get down to the builder, the person actually writing the code. And finally, at the bottom is the actual live running system. And here's the cool part. At every single one of those levels, you ask these same simple but powerful questions. What is all about the data? How is about the processes? Where is about the network and physical locations? Who is about the people involved? When is about time and schedules? And why? Well, that's the big one. That's about the motivation, the business rules that drive everything. You fill this all in and bam, you've got your blueprint. That is the perfect question, because this whole thing can feel a bit abstract, right? So let's bring it right down to earth and find your specific spot on this map.
Okay, so if you're a database pro, you spend most of your life right here, in the what column, the data column. This is your home turf. But here's the key. What you do in this column is totally different depending on which row, which perspective you're looking from.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because this slide clears up a ton of confusion. When you're working from the architect's view in row 3, you're building a conceptual model. You're talking about business things like customers and products. But when you move down one level to the designer's view in row 4, you're getting technical. You're designing the actual database tables, the columns, the data types, the stuff a specific database system can actually understand. It's the same topic, just 2 totally different zoom levels. Right. So once you start filling in all those boxes, not just your column, but all of them, you're creating this incredibly rich, interconnected picture of your entire organization's information. And all that information about your information, well, it has a name. We call it metadata. I mean, the simplest way to think about it is right there on the screen. It's just data about your data. But really, a much more powerful way to think about it is this. Metadata isn't just column definitions in a database. It's everything. It's the business processes, the server locations, the people who have access, the timing of events. It's literally the stuff you use to fill in every single one of those boxes in the framework. So you see, once you start to populate that whole grid, you're not just creating a blueprint anymore. You are building the ultimate metadata map. It gives you this incredible multi-layered view of your entire company, showing you exactly how everything connects, from a big picture idea in the CEO's head all the way down to a single variable in a line of code. And this right here is probably the biggest takeaway from all of this.
Once you understand this, you start to realize that so many of the arguments we have in tech, like relational databases versus object-oriented programming, they aren't really about who's right or wrong. It's just people looking at the exact same problem from different rows of the framework. An architect in row 3 cares about different things than a builder in row 5. And when you realize everyone is just looking at the same blueprint from their own unique perspective, the arguments just kind of dissolve and you get clarity. And there you have it, a quick tour of metadata maps and enterprise architecture. If this helped you see the bigger picture just a little bit better, do us a favor and hit that like button and subscribe. Share it with a colleague who might find it useful, and we'll see you on the next explainer.